Hello. Welcome to another episode of the Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. Each week we both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation together about what we liked, what we hated, if we were scared, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. This season we're going to be focusing on horror subgenres and how they've changed over time. Hope you enjoy it, and thanks for listening. Here we are again in Season 13, and this season we've been doing several mini-series on different horror subgenres. And we're coming up on the end of our mini-series on horror movies about cults. We've got this week and next week, and then we'll be on to something else.
It's kind of, this section's been a little intense, man.
It has. Yeah, it really has. Especially after doing the TV show on the real cults. Mm-hmm. It just really added a different perspective to a lot of this.
Yeah, 100% did. I think it's also because, like, you know, technically this is more realistic than like a vampire showing up or something, you know, so it's like, you know, that some of the stuff that we're watching, the idea had to come from somewhere, and it's just sadness where it probably came from with cults. So it's like it's almost draining, you know, dealing with some of this cult stuff.
Definitely. And this week I think will probably be the best example of that we've done so far, and then next week as well. So
yeah, buckle
up, folks. Fun times ahead.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing, like, that's the you know, this horror podcast, that's some exactly. Horrific stuff happening. So
with cults, we kind of started this mini series talking about how in movies cults kind of started as this like foreign and spooky concept. You know, it was like, oh, the Satanists in Transylvania or something. Mm-hmm. But then as real life events pushed cults into news and popular culture, the way that they were portrayed in movies started to reflect that and take inspiration from real life events. And so the movie that we watched for today is called Red State. And I think that is, you can point to two real life cults or groups or whatever you want to call them, and some of the events that have happened in real life around them that were like very much direct influences on this one.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned wanting to see this one when we were talking in the beginning about kind of the movie selection. Mm-hmm. Did you know about it before we started looking into horror movies about cults, or was it just something that came up when we were trying to decide?
Yeah, I'd actually seen it before.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And so, and I think that we had talked in the past about it. And I think it was mainly because it was like Kevin Smith and horror or something like that. But yeah. So I was definitely aware. I want to say like I saw it shortly after it came out, but I definitely didn't see it in theaters. So I assumed it was rented.
We'll get into some of why not very many people saw it in theaters, which you might in your fun facts, or we can bring it up later. But this one was not even on my radar at all, and then it was really hard to find. I actually had to create a Roku account just to watch this one because it's so not available on the internet, which was kind of weird.
Well, it's just that thing that we're dealing with, dude. Where like, because some, you know, company is streaming it right now, they make it unavailable to like purchase or rent. Like it happens so much. So this is a prime example because I've seen this available to stream since we started the cult section.
Oh,
and
really?
now it's 100%. Okay. Yeah. And it's not. So
yeah. Well, anyway, was kind of surprised from not having heard more about this in the past that it had Skyler and Badger from Breaking Bad, Greg from Succession, Dan from Roseanne, and Milton from Office Space all in the same movie. Like, how had that not come up in just casual conversation more often? But we are here to raise awareness about this movie and about cults. So even though this might get a little dark this week, stick around because, you know, there's some upsides.
Yeah, for sure. I only knew Dan and Milton out of that list.
I watch a lot of TV.
You watch a lot of current stuff.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
But anyway, I will do a quick introduction, then you can do your fun facts, and then we'll get into the Miller Lite from a green bottle always means troubled details.
Like it.
In 2011, Smodcast Pictures brought us Red State, a film written, directed, and edited by Kevin Smith. This movie tells the story of a violent confrontation between the fictional Five Points Trinity Church and the government. Drawing inspiration from real-life religious extremists, Red State demonstrates how quickly a situation can escalate when one side believes they have jurisdiction and the other side believes they're doing the Lord's will. This movie was made on a budget of $4 million and made about $1.8 million at the box office, but that's kind of a nonsense number because there was a bunch of weird stuff around the rollout of this one that I'm sure we'll hear more about in some fun facts soon, and I don't want to ruin them. It can currently be streamed for free on the Roku channel as long as you sign up for an account with an email address.
Perfect.
What did you learn about this movie?
So I guess we're talking about how Kevin Smith said he was going to give the rights away at the premiere and then backed out.
Yeah, that was like 3/4 of the Wikipedia page about this.
It really was, yeah.
People were not happy.
Yeah, and he was just like, psych, it was a trick. I didn't do any more research into that to know if it was like how much it was, because I think at that point I was just like, oh, whatever. But
well, and I felt like even like half the reviews of the movie were like, yeah, this movie wasn't great and it was based on a lie.
Yeah.
It's just like,
yeah,
dude,
it's like these people,
you're not even talking about the movie.
It's like they took a personal, like it was personal attack against them, and you're like, yeah, this is totally not a bot review from
right.
insert whatever company thought they were getting. Yeah, that's totally not the case. Yeah, apparently he said he was gonna give the rights away. Came back, he didn't do it, ended up producing it through like his own, or that, what was the company that was Smodcast, yeah, ended up putting it out through there. But you know, hey, it's his film, I guess he has the right to do what he wants with it.
Yeah,
but also, like, you know, he does come from like the DIY scene too, so like I support him, I feel like, even more with this decision, because it's like you gotta do what you can, I guess, to get views. But I guess he was maybe a little bit ahead of his time before like YouTube was really, I guess, gnarly, maybe, where like everyone's doing stupid stuff for views. So what he did is actually not that bad considering some of the stuff you see. But really the only other fact that I have is that I was talking about the Westboro Baptist Church. You know, they love to protest things, and they initially had a big protest for this film. It's also not the first time that there's been a religion protesting a Kevin Smith film. I'm sure it won't be the last, but the first one was with Dogma, which you know, had the Catholic Church after him, and then this one, obviously, Westboro Baptist Church. I don't know why, but they planned a protest, and there's basically a counter protest that came out, which ultimately kind of stopped this. So the counter protest was done by Kevin Smith and all his fans, and for our listeners, if you don't know, Westboro Baptist Church isn't like the biggest community in the world. They're just one of the loudest and dumbest, and so based out of Topeka, Kansas. So that's how you know they're not smart. And anyway, so they were gonna protest. They got countered, and it was all successful. Everything was good. That's not the best counter protest to the Westboro Baptist Church. I think that goes to Dave Grohl, who played like a funk song on a trailer with his band. Like, it was really great. Like,
to drown them out.
Yes, 100. Like trying to get them involved and stuff. But anyway, so those are the facts for the film.
Nice. So, on the whole, what did you think of this movie? As far as how it exists as a horror movie?
You know, I think my thought that it was a horror movie came when I was reading more about it afterward. I don't think I've gone into any of the cult films thinking like I'm here to watch a horror film, like a traditional horror film, you know, let's talk like Ghost or whatever, you know. I don't think I was going into with that. I think I was like, oh man, some of the things that might come up during this is probably going to be the scary part, the horrific part. Overall, as a horror film, I don't think I don't know. That's difficult, I guess, to answer, because the thought of being trapped for me personally is like scary enough in itself, you know, like held against your will.
Yeah.
But
having to go to church.
Yeah, that's the worst. Yeah, for sure. I would just like, they would be like, all right, we're going to kill you. I'd be like, get it over with, please.
Hurry up.
I need to get out of here. No, I think overall, like, it was what I would probably, as far as horror goes, like, I would probably compare it to like almost like a really aggressive, like a rated R because of violence and gore, but like a teen quality horror film as far as like, you know, acting kind of goes with some of the stuff. I think that there were like 2 scenes that were actually kind of scary when they were kind of sneaking around. But did that answer it? I don't feel like it necessarily.
Yeah, it definitely didn't feel like a traditional horror movie to me. And I think that it was weird because it almost had that setup. Like, it had kind of a promising start, but then felt really disjointed to me after that.
See, I'm the other way around, actually, oddly enough.
Oh, really? Okay.
I thought the beginning of it was like the piece that was like, let's just get to the church. Maybe it's because I've seen it before, but like I felt like the first part of the school, like, and all that stuff happening was almost felt like it was just thrown together, and then, not saying it was put together better, but that's just when it got more interesting to me.
Yeah. Well, so coming into it for the first time, I felt like it almost had like a Hostel vibe.
Yeah.
Where you had like the teenage boys that were going to go out in the sticks to hook up with some older woman in a trailer. And there was like the setup for that. And you're just kind of like, okay, I can see where this could get bad. And then as soon as she pulled out those green Miller Lite bottles, I knew they were in trouble.
Yeah.
Nothing good is about to happen for them. And so they all get drugged and they wake up being held captive in a really long church service. And then there's the whole, like, they're sort of being captured in this church compound, and they, you know, witness the murder and everything. And then, you know, that like they're up next. And then one of the guys gets away and he finds, you know, the weapons cache and everything. And you're just like, oh man, this is like escalating and escalating. And then it was like the story for them was just kind of over. And then it was almost like, oh, the government's really handling this situation poorly and escalating it and causing a shootout. And I was like, wait, what? I thought this movie was about like one of the kids trying to get out. But then it really became more about just like the conflict between the government and the cult. Yeah. And then there was the whole thing with like one of the cult girls begging the one surviving guy to help her save the kids or something. But I got confused because I was like, I thought we were on a path here. And then it seemed like that path just kind of trailed off and disappeared. And now the movie is really about something else, but we never really got back to that front part. And so the beginning to me, like you were saying, kind of felt like a teen kind of gore horror. And then it just like was like, no, that's not what we're going to be for the rest of the movie. And so that I kept feeling like I was missing something with it.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I think that's definitely accurate. For me, like, I think I honestly took it like almost as refreshing because it was like not necessarily the standard story. Like they had a horror ending, like the main 3 kids, like that was like a horror ending. Yeah, that they had. But yeah, it's definitely strange because you it's not like the traditional style where like if the main focus is going to be about the cult, then generally it would start with the cult, you know, like just to kind of get you familiar with them, and then you would, you know, go on to the second part or whatever. With this, it was like, it was definitely a little baffling. I think that 2 things. One thing that I thought was actually kind of different than other cult films with other cult films is like a lot of times I think with like cult or witchcraft films that they kidnap or they, you know, kidnap a person because they're going to be sacrificed. Like they need to do it for the crops or what, you know, whatever the case is.
Some type of ritual.
With this one, it was just because they were doing evil things and they were going to be killed with it. right? So like it was a really weird benefit, I guess, that, I mean, there's like no, like they were just doing it thinking it was the right thing to do because of their cult, but which I guess is what the other ones do, but it wasn't to like possess anything or to gain anything like worldly from it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So it was a little bit different setup, which is what I was kind of thinking of. So I kind of felt like the whole thing was a little bit different. Like anytime you thought you knew where you're at, they just try to change it. I'm not saying it was great. I'm just saying that's what I felt like that was the case, where it was like, yeah, we're going to make you follow these three. And then like all of a sudden they're dead, you know? And it's like, wait, we still got like 30 minutes left in this film. Yeah, that's what I kind of thought, especially like with the ending, the way it came out. But I just thought, well, it is definitely kind of convoluted, but like I genuinely feel like if this was real life, that girl would legit think that, which technically in a way she was kind of right, that, you know, the government was going to kill the kids, or at least hurt those kids in the house, and was just trying to get them out to safety. Why she didn't just like tell them to run in a certain direction, right. I had no idea. But
or how she thought the teenage boy would have made their success doing that better somehow.
Yeah, and like how why the ATF wouldn't surround the building.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah, that's a thing. Yeah. But yeah, so that was, you know, things were convenient in this film as far as, you know, cops not being around, and that's why that one cop was killed when the girl was trying to get the kids safe. Like this film was almost just convenient with certain things that were happening.
I think there was a healthy dose of that. Like, so my assessment walking away from it was that the idea for the movie was about the big conflict between the ATF and the cultists. And then they're like, oh, that's not long enough for this movie. Yeah. So we've got to put some kind of like narrative around the beginning that leads into, you know, how all this started or picked up that, you know, will be appealing to the teenagers or something. And so then you just kind of ended up with this kind of tacked on opening. But something you were saying there, I think, is really interesting in that it wasn't like they were trying to like sacrifice people to bring about the end of the world or give themselves more power or anything. This movie is the first one that we've seen that I feel like really taps into like what modern cult movies use as a device for horror, which is the extreme belief of the cult and what that will drive them to. Yeah. Because it's not like even in and I guess to some extent there was that in The Wicker Man, but the whole time it was kind of a little bit off. Like you weren't sure if there was something supernatural going on, like if there really was some ritual that was going to make the crops better or whatever. And Nick Cage was kind of like in and out of, you know, being coherent for all of it. And so it wasn't as straightforward in focusing on like the, I guess, devotion of the cultist being the thing that made them so dangerous. It was more about like the isolation and being surrounded by them. Whereas I feel like in this one, it was very much like these people are basically capable of anything. Like they are in such a different bubble of reality that there's no reasoning with them. There's no backing down. Like they have prepared for this moment and they are completely and totally in this headspace of what we believe is right and nothing can contradict that. And that's like the source of the horror. And I think that that's really what a lot of more modern cult movies have tapped into, is just this idea that you've got a group of people who are almost living in a different dimension. And that can make them really, really dangerous because there's no bargaining with them. Like they almost become like something like Michael Myers, where it's almost like kind of this faceless enemy, because you can't even just have like a conversation with them where you find common ground. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it definitely does. I think that I wonder if that's more common because of like, I mean, you think about like the cult for the Jamestown massacre, like Jonestown massacre. Like I wouldn't think that would ever be like, I don't think I could ever follow anything enough to be okay with drinking Kool-Aid to die, you know, like kind of thing. So I could definitely see where it's coming from to extent, but no, that's for sure the case though.
Well, and I think it took a while almost and it took a lot of like real life tragedy for horror directors and movie makers to really key in on like, that's a thing that's really powerful to make a horror movie around. It's not the thing that they're worshiping being some supernatural thing. It's not just that, oh, I'm stuck in this place with a bunch of creepy people. It's really the heart of it is that makes these movies scary is that idea.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, and that's almost human nature. I feel like, you think about like, what was that senator's name? Like the people who are on the football coaching staff and, children have been abused on the team for years and they don't say anything because their cult leader, quote unquote cult leader, the coach is, the one doing the, it's just like almost human nature for people to be in their tribe and try to keep it in that tribe. And it's like, you're just hurting, like you're just as guilty as they are.
Yeah.
Not doing anything about it. So, and they don't have to think maybe, I mean, they are, and being that it is a cult, they are, when we were doing the real life cult episode, like we saw, like, it's like almost methodically, like kind of beat you down to build you back up to the way that they want you to think and do things. And, next thing you know, your whole family's getting their ass spanked on the, on the stage. Yeah. Just, it's just like, what the heck? Like, no, like I have too much pride in myself and my family. But yeah, so I could see why that's a thing. But it's almost because it's like just in humans to kind of.
Yeah. It's almost like that's what makes it like even more relatable, like more, you can't really just think your way out of it. Like, oh yeah, well, I'd just never go to Summers Island in the first place, so I have nothing to worry about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, this movie, I thought it was pretty direct. Like, I didn't feel like it had a lot of hidden meaning or anything. It was like really upfront about what it was trying to do and what it was trying to communicate. But I do think there were a couple of super direct real life cult influences that went into this. And one of them they called out directly, and that was when they mentioned Fred Phelps, who's the leader of the Westboro Baptist Church, who I think a lot of the cult here was based on. And then the other, I guess they called out less directly by basically modeling half the movie on it, and that was the confrontation between federal agents and the Branch Davidians in Waco in 1993.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that was basically a big kind of shootout between the FBI and that also the ATF, but against the Branch Davidians, who were a cult that had holed up in this compound in Waco. And so that I feel like was, just really, really obvious that that was the influence. But I think the larger point they were making is like, well, we have groups like that today that, talk about the rest of society being evil and cutting themselves off from it and maintaining their own privacy and stuff. So like, really, how far away are we from another event like that in places all over the country? And this movie, I think, was trying to show like, oh yeah, it just takes one guy getting spooked and pulling the trigger for something to erupt into, another equally terrible situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's definitely real life too. Like, I think that I could definitely see that going down of like, or, I think it's a combo of a few things. So I think that you can have it made like a big eruption happen from like some being nervous, pulling the trigger situation. But, I think that there's also a problem where like you don't, or, like if someone says, hey, we're going to go do this, we're going to go to the mall at 4, then, and, I'm agreeing on it, then what we're doing at 4 is going to the mall. But if it's 4:00 and all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're not going to the mall, like I almost get a little bit even more frustrated because it's like, well, like, but we decided that that's what we're doing. And I'm not saying that that's right at all. That's just how my stupid brain works. Okay. And so I could see like people holding on to that a little bit and like, well, he said if shit happens, I'm shooting, like if they show up on this side to pull the trigger or whatever, like let's say in months of planning that like, all right, well, over there, if they show up, then you're going to shoot them. They're just doing what they're being told. And, then all bets are off. If that makes sense.
To some extent, yeah. I mean, I think that definitely a point that's important to bring up that we hadn't really talked about is the idea that this group of people had been preparing themselves for this type of event. Clearly, part of their theology was that we're probably going to be attacked and we have to defend ourselves. Like, it wasn't just like this is happening and now the leader said go do it. It was months or even years of him preaching about how the outside world was going to come after them because the outside world is evil. And so then when that situation starts, it's even playing into their most core beliefs. And then the reaction, like you said, is like, oh, well, I don't even think about it because we've been hearing, every Sunday or every day or whatever for months about how this is going to happen and this is how we're supposed to respond. And so, yeah, I mean, again, the whole idea of, an alternate reality can't work its way in to this isolated illusion that they've created. And so they're all just like, oh yeah, this is on script. This is what he said was going to happen. So this is how we're supposed to react. And then it doesn't even feel weird to them in the moment, which is again, a thing I think that's absolutely terrifying.
It's extremely terrifying because in that situation, I feel like the difference between a well-meant, like an army, which is what he was basically doing, is he was basically all hat, no cattle, basically. He was all talk, but there was no training involved. Right. The training piece is, what, the trigger discipline and things like that to know when to shoot and when not to shoot. Or if he was really in charge, he would give the order kind of thing. And that's probably the additional piece that comes into someone just panicking and shooting. And next thing you know, all hell's broke loose, I think that maybe it's even more terrifying because how easy that can be done. The whole concept of this movie, is as far as with that cult, there's nothing really stopping people from doing things like that. Do you know what I mean? Legally,
yeah, absolutely.
And so it's that's almost I guess an added kind of terror to this film. It's just shit, any Tom, Dick, or Harry could start their own little group, and unfortunately, it's definitely happening nowadays too. So it's crazy stuff.
Yeah. So each week we've been going back into that masterclass article titled "What is a Cult?" that we brought up in the kickoff episode. And it talks about their 4 attributes, which are authoritarian control, extremist beliefs, isolation from society, and veneration for a single individual. I think that all of those things were very present in this one. I think that it's almost like we don't even have to stretch to make those connections now because the cult portrayal in the movie is so just dead on with kind of that popular sociological definition of what makes up a cult.
Yeah.
So I don't think we need to dig into those so much, but I did want to ask what your thoughts were on if the Westboro Baptist Church is a cult or not.
Oh yeah, they are.
I was going to say, I have a feeling I know your answer.
Yeah. I think any of them are, but no, specifically, anyone that you can't just walk in the front door. If it's super, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's, I would say that. Yeah.
Well, it's just the thing that's weird to me is, it talks a lot in a lot of the movies that we've watched and a lot of the reading we've done about isolation from society being a big thing. And it's just weird to me to think about the Westboro Baptist Church being isolated from society because they're so active. But I think that really the heart of that attribute is basically shutting out conflicting ideas or not allowing, members to bring up external influences or anything. And so I think that they very willfully expose themselves to society in a way that's beneficial and kind of self-confirming for them, which is kind of even scarier.
Yeah.
If the Westboro Baptist Church just had their own compound in the woods and never came out, then awesome. They're going to post hate on their website and that's fine because no one has to go look at it. But the fact that they're like actually attending these funerals and trying to get these reactions out of people to create actions against them to basically confirm that society's evil. You know, it's like this weird twisted logic where the message of the cult allows the cult to be bastards, but then like feel like that makes them more right. It's just this, you know, self-fulfilling prophecy it's gross.
I feel like that's common with a lot of religious communities where you bond together on the negative things or the negative returns. So like when I get someone at my door trying to preach to me and I'm just like, hey, like legit, you looked at a sign that says no soliciting when you came up. Like, and I'm kind of a dick to them. It's like, I don't feel bad about that, but they're going back and saying, well, we had another jerk. And so they kind of bind together. And that's what you kind of see with, you know, with specifically too, with the Westboro Baptist Church. And you know, I guess I just don't understand. Like, I don't care about people enough to tell them what to do with their lives. I just don't care what people are doing. So it's like, I don't understand it at all, which I think is why I'm pretty just straightforward with like, yeah, go fuck them. Like, they can go fuck themselves, whatever. Yeah. They're cult, but they're like, yeah, they're definitely like not good people. There's a really good, so a long time ago, Joe Rogan actually interviewed the daughter of a prominent person in the Westboro Baptist Church. I don't have the name of it. But I'm not going to like link it because that's their podcast. I don't give a shit about, but it was actually really good and telling. Like, I watched like the whole thing cause I just kind of wanted to hear like her thoughts, like going in and like now, like where she kind of stood with some of the things. So I definitely recommend it if you want to hear an actual like Westboro Baptist person talk on it. But, there's also a really good Louis, what's his name? Louis Theroux, or how you pronounce that? He has an episode on him that was pretty good too. But yeah, they're cool. But hey, real quick though, we didn't even talk about the ending of that film. I know.
Oh yeah,
we on time, but that was kind of because one of the things I read initially was that it was really going to end with the apocalypse happening. And the reason why
that would have been a different feel.
Oh man. And I know. And yeah, because one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to bring it up was like, I was rooting against that cult so bad that like when I remember the first time watching it, when the trumpet sounded, I just because I know I've read the Bible, it's just like, oh shit, they were right the whole time, that kind of thing. Where it's like, damn it. Like, there's I can't believe they're getting what they want,
There's that line from The Big Lebowski where he's like, "You're not wrong, Donnie, but that doesn't mean you're not an asshole," or something like that. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought of.
Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, I mean, it was done, But I think the best thing out of this whole film was like when the ATF agents were like, "So then what did you do?" He was like, "Headbutting."
Yeah,
I was like, damn right you did. He was in your personal space, man. Good on you for that. But yeah, that was kind of gnarly too.
Yeah. It was an interesting ending. I felt like he was trying to get like very philosophical, but the part that was most interesting to me was how when the cult heard that, they're like, "Oh, clearly we're right. So now we're just going to go out and gloat."
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very like human reaction, I guess. But yeah. And
then the kids who did the trumpet all got arrested. But, there's definitely logical reasons why that wouldn't happen. But, it was all, kind of funny.
Yeah. Good stuff. Anyway, this was an interesting one. This one felt very grounded in reality in all the worst ways. And I'm excited to come back and talk to you next week about another movie that I'm going to say similar things about.
Yeah. Same.
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com. or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.